When embarking on a digital transformation, there are some key things that vendors and system integrators don't want you to know, and I'm going to talk about what those 7 things are here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients through their digital transformation journeys. And when companies are embarking on digital transformations and planning for their transformations, choosing software, trying to plan for the projects, and actually going through the implementation, there's a lot of misinformation out there and misleading information that can lead you down some rabbit holes that you don't want to be going down. And the reason for this is because there's messaging out there and ideas out there that help sell software and help sell technical services related to the software, but it doesn't necessarily help you. So what I want to do today is dispel some of those things that vendors don't want you to know, and also open your eyes perhaps to some things that you may not have known about what vendors are trying to hide from you. One of the most common challenges and things that you may not know about transformation that vendors aren't necessarily going to be forthcoming about is that transformations are very difficult in general. They're difficult projects, they're typically very complex. As technology evolves and improves, it actually makes transformations more difficult and more complex. So despite all the advancements that have been made in technology over the years, some may think that that's going to enable an easier transformation or it's going to help mitigate risk. But the reality is those changes and those advancements are creating a bigger gap between where you are today and where you're headed in the future. And with that bigger gap comes more risk. So transformations inevitably end up taking more time, more money, more effort, and more heartache than most organizations expect. And that's one thing that vendors often don't want you to know when they're trying to sell you their software or their services. Now, another dirty little secret of the ERP and enterprise software space in general is that the entire software landscape is rigged. When you look at all the ecosystem of players and people that are potentially influencing your decisions, 95% or more of those stakeholders and those influencers are aligned with the software vendors. They're biased to lean toward the software vendors' interests, and inevitably they're not necessarily looking out for your best interest. And just to paint a quick picture of what that ecosystem looks like is you have the software vendors who are trying to sell software at the heart of it. So they're the technology providers. But in addition to them, you have system integrators that are out there implementing their software, and typically they're receiving both commissions for selling or helping sell the software, and they're also receiving revenue in terms of services that they're providing related to that software. So they have a two-pronged interest in furthering the software vendor's interest in ensuring that you adapt as much of that software as possible. When you look at industry analysts, companies like Forrester and Gartner, those organizations are typically paid by software vendors to commission different types of reports and quadrants and analyst briefings and that sort of thing. So the analysts are also out there peddling the software messaging as well. And then finally, you have the media. You have respected technology blogs and websites and traditional magazines that are in many ways struggling because the industry has become so fragmented in the media industry that now you have software vendors that are paying big money to be big sponsors of these media outlets. So it seems as though wherever you turn, you're getting biased information and information that may not be aligned with your best interest, and they're more focused on pushing a software narrative. So it's important to really look through that bias and look at what's best for you and have an unbiased and objective partner that can help you through the entire process from your early decision-making in the software evaluation and planning stages all the way through and including the implementation as well. Despite all the emphasis on technology, all the great advancements that have been made with enterprise technologies over the years, technology really is the least important part of your transformation. And what I mean by that is even though technology is the key enabler or a key enabler to change, it's ultimately the other non-technology stuff that's going to make or break your transformation. So things like how well you program manage the overall transformation, how you redesign and redefine your business processes, how you manage organizational change, what your overall digital strategy is to begin with. All those sorts of non-technical things are going to be more influential on your success or failure than the technology itself. And let's face it, a lot of the software technologies out there today can do a lot of the same things. A lot of them are very similar. And the big differentiators between companies that succeed and the ones that fail are the ones that handle the non-technical aspects of their transformations better than others. So that's one thing that software vendors don't want you to know, because they want you to think that their technology is somewhat of a silver bullet, but that's simply not the case. One of the most popular videos on my YouTube channel is one that's called Cloud ERP is a Hoax. And it may be a little bit dramatic, the verbiage may be a bit strong. Cloud is certainly the wave of the future. Most organizations are starting to move to the cloud if they haven't already. But the reality is cloud isn't a perfect answer. Just like any decision you make, just because you're moving technology from on-premise to the cloud doesn't mean it's going to solve all the world's problems. What it does do is it mitigates a lot of the risk you may have with on-premise applications, and it certainly enables you to access more modern technology that has been written specifically for the cloud. And you also have the benefit of the fact that the vendors are investing tons of R&D dollars in cloud solutions, but not so much on the on-premise side. So the vendors are definitely heading that way. The market is following closely behind. A lot of customers are following behind. Most of the world is going to the cloud. That's not what I'm questioning. What I am questioning is the fact that somehow the cloud is going to fix all of the transformational problems that companies have experienced over the years. In fact, what it does is it eliminates many of the problems and risks of the past, but it creates whole new problems and risks that organizations now need to address and deal with. For example, cloud technology is generally not as flexible as on-premise, where when it was on-premise, you could do whatever you wanted to that software, you owned it, it was on your servers, you could change it however you wanted, for better or for worse. But that flexibility simply doesn't exist to that degree with cloud technologies in general. So that's just one example of many of where cloud technologies aren't the silver bullet that a lot of software vendors sell it as. And so when you go into a cloud-based transformation, it's very important to recognize that. And even if that doesn't change your mind and you're still going to go down the path of cloud, which you most likely will want to, it's important to recognize what those risks are and how you're going to mitigate those risks. In recent years, software vendors are looking for new innovative ways in how they can implement technology better and how they can overcome some of the failure rates that have been experienced in the industry in years past. So what they've done is they've taken traditional waterfall approaches for development, placed the blame on past failures on the fact that waterfall, which is very sequential and milestone based, and said that now we're going to migrate more towards an agile implementation development. And again, like with any decision or alternative you have, there are pros and cons and risks no matter what direction you go. It's just a matter of recognizing those risks and mitigating those risks. With waterfall technologies, yes, it's a very sequential, a lot of upfront investment required to make sure you have your business processes and requirements well-defined enterprise-wide before you start implementing. With Agile, it's meant to break technology development and rollouts into smaller bite-sized pieces to where you can do things more quickly. Now, that does speed things up, absolutely, when you compare Agile development methodologies to waterfall. Well, what it also does is it creates a sense of moving forward without any clear direction oftentimes. And it oftentimes entails moving forward without a whole lot of discipline. So what you may be gaining in terms of speed and flexibility, a lot of times you're losing the rigor and discipline that come along with waterfall. So the key here is to recognize what the risks are, figure out where on the continuum of waterfall versus Agile you may want to fall and makes the most sense for your organization, and then develop a clear roadmap that best suits that. Now, so far I've rattled off a few different things that are hoaxes or silver bullets in the industry, and there's a lot of them, and too many to list here in this video. But what I will say, to summarize, is that there are no silver bullets. If your software vendor or system integrator is telling you that they have an answer that sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. So be wary of terms like industry pre-configurations or implementation accelerators. NetSuite, for example, has something called Suite Success. That's their way of implementing ERP technology in 90 days or less. There's a lot of these silver bullets that are being marketed very effectively by software vendors and system integrators, largely because it sounds so good. It sounds like what we want to hear. It sounds like it's something that'll help mitigate the risks and the failure points that other companies have experienced in the past. But be leery of those sorts of silver bullets because they simply don't exist. Probably the most important thing that software vendors don't want you to know, but it's the most important thing for you to know, is that you own this transformation. This is your digital transformation, your business transformation. You're in charge, you decide how this is going to look. System integrators are very good at coming in with their cookie cutter approaches and saying this is the way you should do things and this works for every other company out there. But the reality is those one-size-fits-all solutions generally do not work most of the time. And it's important to really tailor those one-size-fits-all solutions for your specific situation. The other thing is to be skeptical of industry trends and buzzwords, things that may sound like the next big thing, but may or may not be relevant to you as an organization. So part of ownership entails making decisions that make the most decision for your organization. And it also means taking more control and ownership of the implementation itself. So once you've defined what technologies you're going to deploy, once you've defined what your business process and organizational changes are going to look like, manage that accordingly and don't outsource too much to a system integrator or some third-party outside consultant. The companies that own their transformations and build the competencies internally to augment those third-party outside competencies are the ones that are most successful. So be sure you own your transformation going forward. So these are just a few of the things that I highly recommend you keep in mind as you continue down your digital transformation journey. They're things that software vendors and system integrators and sales reps may not be super excited to share with you, but they're the things you absolutely need to know to make your transformation successful. I also encourage you to check out some of the downloads I've included below. I've included a number of resources in the information description that'll give you more best practices and lessons learned and tips to help you survive and thrive with your digital transformation journey. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day.